Hello, this is Tony Hiller from RealClimateScience.com, the climate guy setting the record straight about climate. This video is part 2 of the roots of the global warming scam, which began on June 23, 1988, when NASA's James Hansen gave testimony to Congress. The U.S. was in the middle of a record heat wave and very severe drought, and James Hansen and Senator Tim Wirth of Colorado went into the hearing room the night before at Congress and sabotaged the air conditioning system. At the hearing, James Hansen announced that the long-predicted greenhouse effect had arrived and that heat and drought like they were experiencing was going to become the new normal. Much of the U.S. was experiencing a very severe drought at that time. And in fact, the Mississippi River almost dried up that summer. There were times during the summer of 1988 when they actually had to shut down commercial traffic on the Mississippi River. James Hansen said that heat and drought like this was caused by the greenhouse effect. With the heat and drought the U.S. was experiencing, combined with people's very short memories, it was very easy for Hansen to get the press hysterical about the greenhouse effect. Although interestingly, that same week there was another big story explaining that droughts like that were cyclical on a 20-year cycle. This article documented many severe droughts in America going back to the Pilgrim days. The Pilgrims didn't have a lot of sport utility vehicles, and had Hansen been an honest scientist, he never would have made the claims which he did. Now let's look at the unprecedented heat which was occurring that week in 1988. Early summer temperatures in the U.S. have been on a downward trend for over a century, and they were particularly hot before about 1955. Since 1955, they've been much cooler. But 1988 was a major exception to the trend. It was extremely hot on June 22, 1988, the day when Hansen and Wirth went in and sabotaged the air conditioner. Here's a map of June 22nd and June 23rd, 1988 temperatures in the U.S., and they were incredibly hot. The yellow pins show locations which were over 90 degrees on those 2 days, and the red pins show locations which were over 100 degrees. Almost the entire United States was over 90 degrees, and there were 100-degree temperatures coast to coast and south to north. So Hansen has all these useful idiots in the press sitting there in this incredible heat in a room where they sabotaged the air conditioning system. It wasn't difficult to get them to buy off on his scam. Hansen told them that there was a trend towards increasing heat due to increasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But the data doesn't back his claim up at all. This graph shows atmospheric CO2 on the x-axis and June 21st temperature in the United States on the y-axis. As you can see, there's actually a downward trend as carbon dioxide has increased. The actual trend is the exact opposite of what Hansen told Congress. The night Hansen and Wirth sabotaged the air conditioning system was the hottest June 22nd on record in the Washington, D.C. area. So Hansen launched the global warming scam on June 23, 1988, and then nature gave him a lot of backing the rest of the summer. Later that summer, due to the heat and drought and many decades of fire suppression, about 1/3 of Yellowstone National Park burned up. After Hansen's testimony, the massive Yellowstone fires of 1988 of course got blamed on the greenhouse effect. But once again, actual data shows the exact opposite. This graph of burn acreage from the United States Forest Service shows that as CO2 has increased, burn acreage in the United States has plummeted. It's down 80% since the 1930s. Hansen had heat, drought, and fires during the summer of 1988 to get the press hysterical. And one more major event happened that summer. Around the same time as the Yellowstone fires, Hurricane Gilbert arrived. It was the largest hurricane on record. I was living in Houston at the time, and at one point the hurricane track was forecast to hit Houston dead center. Hansen predicted a large increase in the severity of hurricanes, and Hurricane Gilbert played right into his hands. Actual data shows the exact opposite, however. Major hurricanes in the U.S. peaked in 1949 and are currently at a record low. There haven't been any major hurricane strikes in the U.S. for 12 years, and it's been 25 years since the U.S. was hit by a Category 5 hurricane. Major hurricanes are defined as having winds over 110 miles per hour. For reference, Hurricane Sandy had winds of about 75 miles per hour at landfall. Heat waves, forest fires, and hurricanes are all doing the exact opposite of what Hansen predicted. What about droughts? Hansen got droughts backwards too. The United States has gotten wetter over time, and Hansen's testimony came during one of the last severe droughts the U.S. has experienced. Hansen plays right into the biblical fear of hellish heat waves as a result of our carbon sins. But thermometer data from NOAA shows the exact opposite. Heat waves in the United States have plummeted over the last century. This graph shows the average percent of summer days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit at all NOAA United States Historical Climatology Network stations. As you can see, the 1930s were extremely hot. The 1950s were extremely hot. But since the 1950s, we haven't had a lot of heat waves in the United States. 1988, the summer when Hansen gave his testimony, was actually the last really hot summer across the United States. In recent years, heat waves have been near record lows in the U.S. Hansen got everything exactly backwards at his June 23, 1988 testimony. Heat waves, fires, hurricanes, and droughts have all gone the opposite direction of what he predicted. Data doesn't matter to most people in the press, and in fact most people on the left. Hansen gave them an excuse to blame Americans. Anytime the left has an excuse to blame Americans for something, they latch onto it. Remember Obama's apology tour at the start of his administration? And then he totally bought off on the global warming scam. Hansen's June 23, 1988 testimony to Congress was chock full of misinformation, but it didn't make any difference. Almost everybody on the left believes that hurricane, heat, fires, and drought are getting worse, even though the data shows the exact opposite. The global warming scam is an exercise in mass superstition and hysteria, and it's driven by the worst junk science ever done. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for a long time.